Hello. It is December 6th, 2024. I'm Carson Hof, and this is devlog number 1 for Project Kickstep. I wanted to take I don't want to say a break, but I wanted to invest myself in a different project, one where I could maybe jump into the game design elements a bit sooner. I've spun up Project Kickstep. What is Kickstep? Kickstep is it's still in the works. So what it could be is open to divergence. But currently the plan is to make a first-person action game with a strong emphasis on mobility and just player movement over like the typical like shooting elements that you see in first-person games. Although there is going to be a combat-oriented shooter. I don't want to get too much into the design, I guess, because like I said, it could change. But I'm taking inspirations from Titanfall 2, from Gears of War a little bit, from Warframe, from Doom. I think it's the other game that comes to mind. I think it's called Might and Magic. I think it's been a while since I played it, so I actually don't remember if that's the right name. It's got physics and kicking, so yeah, I will. This is the first devlog. I don't have any sort of like roadmap yet to go along with this. Maybe I'll spin one up because I do have ideas for what I want to do next, but I might also just leave it open. So let's go ahead and just jump into what exists now. Project Blue, for those who I guess never watched that series, was a fighting game that I've been working on, or is a fighting game that I am working on. Although like I said, I've sidelined it for a little bit to do this. Kickstep is something that I wanted to invest myself in because I think this gives me a better opportunity to work on things such as level design and enemy design. And as I said already, like I get to go into the design aspects more. Project Blue is requiring a lot of investment into like system level implementation, but it didn't mean that. But what that meant was I was not getting to put myself in the shoes of an actual designer, right? I was trying to make a system that would enable a designer. But if you've watched that devlog, you see that I'm still just implementing like fundamental things. Here, already, I'm having to come across questions of like, how do I want this game to actually play? Because that is just how close I am to having. That is how close the features are to the game design. Fighting game has like so many little systems that as you increment onto it, only towards the end can you then start going like, okay, this character needs to play like this, there should be this universal mechanic to enable this for everyone. Here I'm already like, okay, how does this play? Because, if I jump this way, then that style of gameplay does or does not work. So, yeah, going over the features, this is obviously, the features that exist as of today, this is obviously spun out of the Unreal Starter first-person game, so there's a fair bit that kind of came out of the box for me. But if you're not familiar, like out of the box, it has camera controls. You can WASD around, just walk around, strafe. There is a shooting component with a gun. I guess I'll just speak to it. Normally, you pick up the gun, like that rifle's a pickup. The pistol's not actually implemented. That's something I just added. The way I've actually modified how the weapon stuff works, because like one of the inspirations, like I said, is Doom. Doom Eternal, more specifically. In that game, you don't like pick up weapons, consistently. It is more like you might pick up a weapon and unlock it for the rest of the game, but generally you are just swapping between it. So, as of right now, you can hit 2 or 1 to equip or unequip a weapon. There is some logic that is breaking because you should not see the gun. Like the gun is effectively just attached to my mesh when I'm not using it, and it should be invisible, but that's broken. That's fine. You can see when I equip it though. We have the sound. I have the projectile just disconnected out of the box. The first-person shooter does have like a yellow ball that comes out. It's not really what I expect this gun to play like, or if I use a gun like this at all, but I just did away with it and I turned the volume way down. So, let's see. Going back to the inspirations I talked about. So I mentioned Doom. Doom Eternal specifically. If you've never played Doom Eternal, it is a first-person shooter that is a little bit more like what people might say arcadey, or like a boomer shooter, where there's not a sprint button. You are just always moving at like a consistent speed, at least while walking. Doom does have a dash, which I have implemented as well. As of right now, there's no cooldown or anything, so mobility is kind of a joke. It's definitely you just spamming dash. There will definitely be some sort of cooldown though. Whether it be like something you have to manage, like earn the cooldown back, or if it's just time-based, I don't know. Speaking to, let's see. You might notice that there's like a little bit of a bounce going on with the landing. Like if I dash sideways, it tilts kind of in the way opposite of the movement. So you kind of like, your head kind of like tilts, like whipping from the inertia of landing. This is where I'm taking inspirations from Might and Magic. I'm actually going to look it up on my Steam library really quick. I think that's what the game is called. Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, that game. If you've ever played that game, or seen gameplay of it, it is first person as well. It has a very robust sense of feeling. So like when you run, your character's like kind of swaying. When you climb, there's like a staggered. There's just a lot of little tactile feelings to the game that makes it feel very grounded, and I really like that. Although I probably can't get to the same fidelity that it has, because like I said, I'm also taking some Doom Eternal inspiration. So if you play that game, it's like the opposite. Like I said, it's a boomer shooter, so everything's very slick, very streamlined. I want to have like a blend of that. I want it to feel snappy. I want it to feel responsive. I don't want to have the immersive elements get too much in the way of the responsiveness in the feel. A good example of the opposite of that is like Red Dead Redemption 2 in particular. If you ever played that game, you know that like even just going to a full sprint, your character has like a little bit of a startup speed, and anytime they interact with something, there's actually like a pretty like immersive animation, but it also means that you're like sitting there waiting for your character to, whatever, pick up the thing, to throw the lasso, to check the pockets, open the drawer, like whatever the little like minute detail. It adds a lot to the immersive element, but it means you're also waiting a lot. And I want this game to feel very snappy, very quick. So not my compromise, but like I said, I'm trying to hit like somewhere in the middle. And so like the one example I just listed, like there's a quick dash here, very very Doom Eternal-like, but there's also this tilt, this little bounce. Continuing on from mobility, there's actually a slide as well. This is very much the Warframe, at least thus so far of the game. So you can refer to in the little debug window. There's like movement mode, and then there's state. State is probably the one to pay more attention to. That's the one that like my code is mostly referencing. Movement mode is something that's inherent to Unreal. But anyway, if I crouch, I'm in a crouching state. My movement is slower, my camera is lower, and that's about it at base. If I do a crouch while in the air, I will enter it when I land. And if I'm doing it with enough speed, I will go into a sliding state. So here I'll do the dash to a crouch. You can now see I'm sliding. Ignore the gun bobbing, that's just the movement animation blueprint. I haven't like edited it in any way to account for sliding, so it just kind of looks silly right now. And also ignore the fact that you are just sliding indefinitely. That's I don't know what the friction coefficient will look like, but while you're sliding, you are supposed to like have a higher top speed. You see, if I just walk in a straight line, my angled absolute velocity, the fourth line of the debug, is 1000. And if I dash, I'm going up to 2000. So the dash is like just a set speed with no limit, and the slide is maintaining a speed with no limit. So I lose a little bit on the velocity there, angled velocity. I actually don't know totally what's going on there. I think it has to do with the fact that you're technically arcing when you dash, and so maybe a little bit of your velocity is going down into the ground and disappearing because the slide is only preserving the horizontal movement. But anyway, if I go into a slide, once you go here, the movement controls change kind of drastically. You're no longer strafing, you are now steering. So, and going back to that like sense of like real movement, real like tactile sensation, there's like an inherent tilt whenever you steer. So this pillar literally exists just to give a sense of like where you're moving, because without this, it's actually kind of hard and disorienting. But you can see I'm steering right just to like stay on the map, but I can steer left. It's not supposed to be super steerable. Like I don't want it to be like you're just always sliding. I want you to have to engage with multiple elements of movement, which I'm still, trying to iron out what the incentive is to dash versus walk versus jump versus slide. So all a work in progress in that sense. But yeah, slide is obviously like a pretty good right now anyway. Pretty good way to go like high speed persistently. But if you want to stop, well, you can smack into the wall like that, or you have to like stand up like so. Let's see. Lastly, there is a kick. As the name would suggest, Kickstep. Just me mashing two words together that I think kind of evoke the sense of movement that I want in this game. The kick right now is this camera tilt to kind of suggest the way you might lean back if you did like a front kick, and you can actually see an arrow or like a couple frames that is just pointing forward. The kick right now only has one real interaction, and it's on these glowy walls. If I kick, I get a little bit of upward. And similar to the dash, there will probably be some sort of cooldown or restriction to make it so you can't spam it, because as of right now, you can actually just scale walls like this. It isn't really broken per se, but this isn't good gameplay loop. This is not a good gameplay loop, I would say. Like, the fact that there might be a reason to scale a wall like this, but it means like just staring at the wall, hammering one button, and can't like look away, or else you start kicking, you're missing the wall. This is obviously not ideal. So I don't know if kicking will necessarily look like this either. Like if it's like, even if I restricted it, like is doing a kick and then doing whatever, like looking around, shooting, whatever the gameplay loop will be beyond that, is that a good experience? Because you're still like facing nothing. It might be more ideal to maybe have kick be more context sensitive, and it's like if I'm near a wall, I don't have to look at it, I just have to kick and it'll do the launch regardless of the way I'm facing. I don't know yet. One practical use of the kick as it is though is clearing larger gaps. If I try to jump this normally, or if I try to dash across it, I will not make it. But obviously there's a pillar in the middle, so what I can do is I can jump, kick, and it'll give me that extra little air across it. And I can do the same thing with a dash, go much further. So that's just like a demonstration of like how I kind of want it to be implemented. I can kick, slide. See, got a nice little 1, 2, 3 sense of expression there, mobility expression we'll call it. But is that practical? Like, would you ever need to do this in a level, or like is that how I want it to play? Probably not. The more I talk about it, the more I do like the idea that you don't have to look at the wall to kick off of it. But yeah, there's also something needs to be said about like the air control while you're kicking. Like you don't really have any additional air control. When you kick, you are stopping your vertical momentum and maintaining your horizontal. So what I mean by stopping vertical is if I just applied a launch character node, which is what I am doing to this, and I didn't have any like check to remove the current velocity, this would not be as effective as it looked there. If I didn't have it stopping velocity, the character would continue to plummet and they would just slow down a little bit when I did the kick, but they would still go downward because this launch is nowhere near enough to offset that fall. So in that sense, this kick can also operate a little bit as like a breather. Like if you can imagine, I'm in a, let's like just modify it a little bit. I just like spread this. If you can imagine, I have more movement control. Maybe I can do like a wall run on like one of these walls, but I have to like orient myself. I can imagine myself launching into this room and then doing a kick to like give myself just like a moment in the air to like, look around, analyze the room, and then make a snap decision. So, but I don't think that is But I don't think that is enough of a use case for such a what I'm hoping to be like a core component of the gameplay loop. You know what? I said let's not talk about design, but screw it. Let's talk about design a little bit. Like what I'm hoping from this game. Going back to Doom Eternal, I actually forget what these gameplay pieces are called, but if you ever played it, it's generally like a level-based game where you're kind of moving through a linear level, just killing, shooting everything in your way, and going the one way you can. There are like altars though that you go up to and you activate, and then you're in an arena. And during that arena, you're just trying to survive and rack points up and just kill everything that comes at you. That tidbit of gameplay is what I'm looking for. So I'm imagining you playing in like kind of a large square room with, terrain not unlike this, although obviously more stylized, more interesting. And the idea is that you will have incentive to punch, kick, shoot your way through the masses of enemies. Another good example might be I think it's called Devil's Daggers, which is just a game that is like all of that. You're just in a survival landscape, trying to make it as far as you can. I mentioned a greater emphasis on mobility over shooting. I don't have enough combat elements in place to really demonstrate what I mean by that, but I think I can at least speak to it. I want shooting to be secondary to movement. And so the way I'm currently envisioning that is the gun play being a little bit more casual. This is also where I mentioned like Gears of War. I don't know if like people who've never played it would imagine it, or if even people who've played with it would agree on me. But I felt like Gears of War always had a weird. I'm speaking to 3, I should say specifically as well. I did not play Judgment for 5, but at least in 3, believe it or not, the weapon that I would consider most like competitively viable of the starter weapons is the shotgun. It's called the Gnasher. The reason that is like maybe a little ironic is because in most other shooters, shotgun is almost always the noob weapon, right? It's the weapon where if they're just in range, you can't miss it, and it's like a one-shot kill. It's like sort of the end-all be-all at close range, and it's not supposed to be something you ever beat or compete with using other guns in its effective range. The reason why it's a little unique though in Gears of War though is because it's a cover shooter, which is to say you're playing in, well, not necessarily, but in this case it is also third person. So what you would do is you'd be running around, you'd be standing, by default you stand higher than the cover, most cover, but you hit a button and you're like saddle up against it and you're kind of like crouched down low. And so from a distance, characters on the opposite side of the cover can't really do anything to you. Enemies can't shoot you generally, or if they can only like clip you. This means that like long-range engagements or even medium-range engagements are not nearly as effective. There's the Lancer, which is like the iconic gun from Gears of War. It's the assault rifle with a chainsaw. But you do not... That weapon is almost more like a check. It's saying like, do you know to use cover? Because if you don't, yeah, I'll mow you down and you'll die. But you very quickly learn that cover is like too important for that reason. So you're generally just like sprinting between cover and kind of invalidating the Lancer to some degree. And so how does that make the Gnasher like the skillful weapon? That doesn't sound like the Gnasher's any more skillful, right? It just sounds like the Lancer's ineffective. Part of the reason is because Gears of War, the movement is actually... It's almost like the inverse of what I'm talking about. The movement in Gears of War is like pretty sluggish, like the default movement, just walking and sprinting. And the characters are really chonky. Like Gears of War has that what is that? What's the word I'm looking for? It has that notoriety, we'll say, of being like the really beefy, bronzy dudes in a dude bro shooter. I don't think the game actually deserves that, but that label. But some people definitely know it as such. And it's just because they all are giant and wide like like linebackers. So because of that element, the Lancer is like not really all that expressive or skillful of a weapon. You kind of just laser them and they can't realistically dodge it. Well, there is like a roll, but even then it's not like they get super far. So okay, but why does that make the Lancer or the Gnasher, the shotgun, any more skillful, right? Again, I'm just like listing things that make the Lancer ineffective, but that doesn't really mean the Gnasher's great. The real reason is because of how you can animation cancel the cover. I mentioned before you can go up to cover and hit the button that prompts you and gets you low and up against it. The thing is, you can actually cancel that. You can cancel it into itself. So in Gears of War, you might go up to the cover and you hit the button. You can hit it from kind of far away too. It's not like you have to be up against it. You can hit it from arbitrary distances in my own game, but like you can kind of like pretend you can do it from here, and your character will like slide into place, and then you can cancel it, hit the roll button, and then enable it like so. Like I'm gonna reenact it. I'm up here. I hit this. I slide at some of the distance. I cancel it. I roll. I hit it again. I slide into here, and so you have this interesting like back and forth between the covers that are around you. That gives you this really unorthodox sense of movement, and that is like you kind of ducking and weaving effectively, and it's how you position and fight with the Gnasher. So you have this almost like jousting gameplay where two players will be like kind of bouncing, rolling, kind of like rebounding off of walls around each other, trying to poke each other down with the shotgun, with the Gnasher. You can obviously like go straight at them and like go trade blow for blow, try and get the win. But if you're like rolling or whatever using the movement options, then you're just gonna like get stuffed when they shoot you. The Gnasher is a shotgun, but it's not like it doesn't have like some medium range effectiveness. You can definitely also just get like picked off like at a medium distance with like 2 to 3 shots instead of just a 1-shot gib. So that that was a long-winded way to say like that sensation of like the shotgun. It's like it's not hard to aim, but the point is because the Lancer's not as effective. It's like most of the assault rifles are just not as effective because of the cover shooter mechanics. The gameplay ends up being more about this way you like control movement with the cover system, and then trying to just 1-shot kill each other at close range. That is the sensation I'm looking for in this game. So, these are just tentative ideas for guns. I'm imagining a gun like the Smart Pistol from Titanfall 2. If you ever played that, or if you played Soldier 76 from Overwatch, when he uses his ult, both guns operate kind of the same way. You have basically a massive reticle. It's like maybe a quarter of the screen or something on average between the two games, and anything in that reticle is your character will auto aim at. It's more like in Soldier 76 cases he auto aims, and in the pistol's case you shoot the bullet and I think it like steers into them, like it homes, but it's effectively the same thing. You don't have to aim nearly as much as you do with a typical like precision weapon. Obviously a shotgun is another good implement for like reducing the skill needed for aiming precisely. And I'm imagining maybe like a grenade launcher type weapon, something that you could maybe use to like also propel you. That's the other thing, because mobility is important. It's like I really want these guns to kind of facilitate that. So, a shotgun, I can imagine maybe you like shoot, and it kind of actually like knocks you back. It gives you a little bit of like a second jump, maybe. The grenade launcher, you might like shoot the ground and get like a rocket jump, kind of a la Team Fortress 2, the way Soldier can kind of like bounce around, or Demo Man could bounce around with their explosives. The Smart Pistol doesn't have like mobility implementations, but maybe. I haven't thought too hard about it. I shouldn't call it the Smart Pistol, but the auto aim gun, whatever I end up implementing it as. But it also seems like it would be just a good like standard, like this is a consistent like low damage but like high rate of fire, high range weapon comparatively. So those are that's the type of gameplay I'm looking at, because by removing the requirement, we'll say, to like dealing damage, to like getting the shots off, you can put more emphasis on the mobility. I can make a deep system where you are expected to dash, slide, kick, jump, flip, whatever. I don't know yet. I want a grapple hook, something like that. You can deliver on all of those mechanics and then ask less of their aim, or other way around. You can ask less of their aim, and thus allowing you to put more skill expression in the mobility. And I think that will make for a very cool, very dynamic, very cinematic experience. It isn't, I'm not gonna say like it's never been done in a video game or a shooter or whatever, but like it's a little bit less tapped than the typical, sprint, aim down sight, shoot, like pure like skill precision. I think you can get some really cool dynamic stuff going if you focus on the mobility first. So, yeah, that's I was thinking of doing a devlog 0 to talk about that stuff. I guess I've kind of done it here. Maybe I'll still do one, and it'll just have like video. What am I trying to say? Like video snippets of the gameplay to better sell what I'm trying to go for. But or maybe I'll just do an article. I don't know. But yeah. I don't really feel the need to maybe dive into the code just for this stuff. If you, like I said, a lot of this is just the first person implementation. I don't know. Maybe we can talk a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, so handle steering. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to size some of this stuff. So the movement input. I'm gonna turn the music down just a smidge. Okay. Yeah. So let's see. By default, we have a enhanced input action for the movement. This is just looking for WASD basically. We do a check if we're in the sliding state. Wait. Oh, if we're not in the sliding state, that's hard to read with how the thing overlays. If we're not in the sliding state, then we continue on and we do another check. If we're in kicking, then we're locked out of movement inputs in general. If I play this again and it opened on the other monitor, I can move around, but as soon as I kick, you can see I kind of pause. I'll probably have to do a little more robust way of writing this because kicking is just the only way you're like locked out of movement. But realistically, there could be a lot of things that might do it. So, I'm not worried about that now. And if that's the case, then we do handle traditional move. This is like the out of the box thing that Manny has going for him. You just take the X and Y values and apply it to the appropriate movement input. And movement input is just the Unreal's built-in way for how pawns handle movement. At this point, it then goes into the character movement, or it's not really goes into, but it's now just a bunch of preset variables you can configure that determines like how movement functions. You know, what your velocity, what your top velocity is, what your acceleration is, what your friction is, what your, I think it's like your braking function is, which is like when you do or do not braking to deceleration, when you do or do not hold input to brake. Anyway, steering though is the interesting one. That took me like a little bit of time to like figure out. Gotta say, compared to Project Blue, there's a lot more trigonometry going into this, which is fun and challenging. It's been a bit since I've had to use this trig in anything really, so but it's cool. Basically, we're taking the X input, so like that's the A and the D key if you were normally to strafe left or right, and we're adding it to the yaw, which is this has also been hard for me to learn. Pitch, roll, yaw. Yaw is the tilt. No. Yaw. Yaw is a Z. Z is the vertical. So it's the way you turn. Okay. So when you hit A or D, you are then proportionally being twisted to the right or left, and the velocity has to be recalculated, right? Because your velocity is not it's not actually attached to the way you're looking necessarily. So if I just turn the camera, I'm still going in the same direction, right? Like nothing's changing in that regard. So what we're doing is as we have an X value, which is the A or D key being held down, we're also then recalculating velocity, which is what actually causes the character to go like left or right. And then lastly, there is the like configuration of the way you're tilting, which is what this additional rotation value is. This gets evaluated in the step function, the event tick, that's what I mean. Let's see. Yeah, in this function, apply rotation to spring arm. So the control rotation is again like something Unreal has built out. It is sort of the initial, we'll say, like read of how your camera should be tilted or angled. And I think by default it's just looking at like your camera, like the way you're moving the mouse. I am changing the control rotation right now just by moving my mouse around, but I'm doing an additional step where I combined that rotation with this rotation, additional rotation, that is just being adjusted by other functions throughout the character. And then I set the relative rotation on the spring arm being kind of like the faux body for my character. You might have saw it earlier, but first person Manny, he's just a camera with arms. And you see the arms a little bit when you jump. And I guess obviously when you don't really see the arms, but oh yeah, you can see this hand a little bit. So the spring arm is just this red line that connects the camera. It's generally used for third-person games, but I'm tentatively using it for this because it gives me something that I can like adjust. I can like rotate this, and that is like how I'm doing like my tilting when I'm in runtime. So that is being updated based on like the tilting, or based on like steering as well. So and then the Y value just gets eaten. And when you're sliding, holding forward and backward does not currently do anything. Currently, you know, very very reasonable, very feasible to say have your character decelerate if you hold back, or decelerate less if you hold forward. I'm not gonna have you accelerate while sliding. That seems kind of silly, but it's an idea. Yeah, so that's a steering. Let's see what else. What's another interesting thing that I could maybe touch on? One last thing we'll say. Kicking. Yeah, kicking. Okay. So currently you can kick while standing or falling. As I mentioned, it's basically just it looks like just an arrow. It's actually spawning a hitbox very much like Project Blue. There's actually a cube that gets drawn in front of me. Could rendering internet game, no. Okay, so now when you see it, it's a little more obvious. This cube right here is what we're actually checking collisions on. The arrow is nonsense. The arrow is me like planning ahead, like maybe if I want to have you kick off a wall, it needs to have like a sense of direction. And so like maybe like the wall kick will actually send you backwards. But I haven't implemented that, and I don't know if I will. But this is what's actually happening. We're just checking this cube for a wall that we care about. Again, it's only that blue glowy wall. This does nothing. And this does something. So, let's see. Go back to you. I've got the event graph split up into a like a. Right now it's just called event graph, but I think this is kind of more like the input and the situational events. Things like, oh, you landed. Camera shaking. Oh yeah, there's a little bit of camera shake. I don't know if it was obvious, but sliding. There's just a slight bob. It doesn't sell it very well to the whole point about like contextual feeling or like immersive. I need to come up with a word. The immersive tactile sensation, but it's something that I plan to work on more. So that's what this stuff is. But there's also a state graph. That's what I was trying to get to. When we do apply kicking, we set the kicking state. We do this is the hitbox kick box timer. Again, if you ever watched any Project Blue stuff, not any, but the ones where I talk about the hitboxes, this is kind of familiar. And then we're doing a lerp where we update that additional rotation again. This time we're adjusting the pitch, which is just what gives you that little like lean back motion. I don't know if that's what I want to land on either, but it sells it well enough for now. Lot of timelines in this project compared to Blue. I actually can't remember if I've used a timeline in Blue because so much of fighting games, or at least the fighting game I'm envisioning, is like you want to have like snappy, just like canned animations, like a punch is always a punch. But here, because I'm trying to give like the sense of motion to some of these things, I need a timeline to really in a modular way like affect movement. So like when I crouch, you can see there's a little bit of a bounce, right? It's not just I lower the camera, I don't snap the camera down, I don't move it at a linear pace. There's a little bit of bounce when they go down, and then when they go up, it's a lot smoother, which I think kind of reflects how a person does that. Same with this tilt. I'm not even gonna dig into it, but I mentioned there's an on landing event. That's obviously what's playing here, or what's being triggered to cause that bounce. Oops. Yeah, I think that about covers it. I was not planning on going so deep into it all, but that is the current state of things, you know. Hoping to get like a better foundation for combat. I'm hoping to figure out what I want Kick to do more of. You know, I mentioned Titanfall 2 and Warframe and such as like inspirations. You can kind of bet that I want to at least try a wall run and see if there's a place for it here. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'll, you know, the way I envision this is I will probably stick with Project Kickstep for a few more rotations of game dev, a few more sprints, if you will. But then it'll probably become like a juggling act between it and Project Blue. Kind of just depending on like what type of experience I want to work towards for my portfolio next, or what interests me. So, yeah. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day.